Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Israeli tanks capture the Gazan side of the Rafah border crossing overnight. The Hamas terrorist group demands a ceasefire, with terms Israel says are far from what's necessary for a deal. Hostage talks are set in Cairo today.
Clashes with police as protesters try to disrupt the Met Gala. MIT students retake an encampment they were evicted from, knocking down police barriers, the latest from the anti-Israel protests.
Lawyers for former President Trump say they might request sanctions against Special Counsel Jack Smith. Defense attorneys now asking for discovery on evidence handling in the classified documents case.
With 2 weeks of testimony behind us in Trump's New York trial, the focus now shifts to his financial records as the former president is once again found in contempt for violating a gag order.
A deadly tornado, apple-sized hail, nearly 100 million people under a severe storm threat, the latest on some fierce weather hitting the U.S.
Medicare Trust Fund reserves are expected to be depleted 5 years later than forecasted. What this means for your scheduled benefits.
Boeing's first manned Starliner test flight was scrubbed last night, just hours before liftoff. Hear why and find out what happens next.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Today is Tuesday, May 7th. Breaking news overnight. Israel's military seized control of the Gazan side of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt early this morning.
The IDF says it started a precise counterterrorism operation in the area after intelligence indicated the Rafah crossing was being used by terrorists.
The IDF released footage of tanks driving up to the crossing today. It says terrorists fired mortars from the area toward a key aid crossing. This comes after a Hamas rocket attack killed 4 soldiers there on Sunday. Israel's military says special forces are handling the crossing, but did not say how long troops would control it.
The Hamas terror group says it wants a proposed ceasefire deal by Egypt and Qatar. The framework is for 33 hostages in the first of 3 phases. Israel said those terms are far from meeting necessary requirements and is sending a delegation to Cairo for talks. Mediators said negotiations will resume today.
This comes after Israel ordered evacuations in eastern Rafah and began striking terrorist targets yesterday. Israel's war cabinet says it will continue to exert military pressure on Hamas.
Israel's army asked around 100,000 civilians to move to a humanitarian zone with water, food, and medical supplies. The White House says the U.S. remains opposed to a Rafah invasion and that President Biden has been briefed on negotiations.
The White House said it's reviewing the Hamas response to the temporary ceasefire deal and urged Hamas to, quote, come clean about its intentions. Watch.
You know who hasn't answered a single question about his intentions and what games he might be playing or where he intends to take this? Mr. Sinwar, the head of Hamas. And I think it's high time that he answers some of these questions and he come clean about what his intentions are.
Joining me now for more on the war is Jonathan Tobin. He is the editor-in-chief of Jewish News Syndicate. Good morning, Jonathan. Good to have you. So Israel has announced, as we just heard, the invasion into Rafah a while ago already. What do you think changed now? Why are they moving in now, also after Hamas had announced it accepted a ceasefire deal?
Well, Hamas didn't accept a deal. Hamas made a counterproposal, which was just one more of a series of extortionate attempts to try to give away a few hostages, not giving up all of the hostages, but only just, 33. Some of those may be just merely corpses. There are over 100 people still being held by Hamas. There's been no proof of life. Some of them are American citizens. And yet the Biden administration continues to basically back Hamas in these negotiations. And Israel has waited. It's waited for months. It knows, it's the Netanyahu government knows that it must eliminate Hamas from any part of Gaza. Otherwise, Hamas will have won this war. They will emerge triumphant, and they'll be able to keep their promise to repeat the October 7th atrocities many more times. That can't be allowed, and that's not in the interest of either the United States or Israel. And yet Biden seems determined to preserve Hamas in power there, backing these immoral negotiations, which don't release all the hostages. And what Hamas wants is to give a few hostages, keep many still in reserve, and to force Israel back to where it was on October 7th and to suffer no consequences
So on that
for committing
point,
mass murder and terrorism.
So on your point, can you tell me a little more just what was in Hamas's proposal? What do we know what was in that deal or proposal that Hamas, so to speak,
As far as I know,
accepted?
they have stuck to their demands that basically the war be over, that this be a more or less permanent ceasefire, that Israel withdraw out of all of the Gaza Strip, that Palestinians, meaning Hamas, be allowed to return to the parts of Gaza from which they were that Hamas was cleared out. So basically, they want to return to the status quo of October 6th and suffer no real penalty other than the casualties that they've already suffered, which, as far as they're concerned, the more Palestinians die, the better Hamas likes it, because their whole purpose is just to make Israel look bad.
So let's
Israel
unpack
has
a
to
little bit.
eliminate Hamas. Biden doesn't seem to get that.
So let's unpack a little bit of what you touched on earlier. So Israeli officials have been saying that this is a limited operation now. So what do you think is the objective with this?
The objective is to prepare the way. I mean, Netanyahu has been edging towards the inevitable, which is to clear out Rafah. He's been trying to do it in stages so as to not give the United States any pretext for declaring that it's creating a humanitarian catastrophe. They've set up an area where people can go, people who are in Rafah can go and still have care. But remember, every Palestinian in Rafah is basically a human shield for Hamas and for its remaining military formations. Israel is trying to do this gradually, not to do it in a complete, sort of shock and awe kind of operations, so as to minimize civilian casualties, to maximize the ability of civilians there to escape, to get out of the way, and yet, which is the most reasonable approach. But what Biden wants is just an end to the war. And the reason why he wants it is really not so much so as to save Palestinian lives. He's looking to save his political hide.
So what I'm
he
understanding
feels
is
that the longer the war goes on, the worse it is for him in terms of the election.
So what I'm getting from this is that you're saying that this is the start of more. So is there any sense of what could happen after a full Rafah invasion? Like, would Israel keep, because Israel keeps saying that it's the last stronghold. Could that mean that after a full invasion or operation, that would be the end of the war?
Well, once Hamas is cleared out of its last strongholds, hopefully that will mean the end of the war, and that there won't be an effort to revive it from within any civilian areas. Yes, that would mean the end of the war. It would also mean the end of Hamas governing any part of Gaza. And yet somehow the Biden administration seems determined to preserve Hamas, at least in a part of Gaza, because that means that the war won't end in an Israeli victory, because he's afraid that if he doesn't do everything he can to stop Israel from clearing out Hamas, the left wing of the Democratic Party will turn on him. That's what this is hinging on. This is not so much being determined by Israeli strategic imperatives or the military situation. This is about American politics, and that's what's motivating Biden's decisions and his efforts to push these negotiations. And it's also motivating Netanyahu's efforts to sort of do this in step-by-step manner so as not to create a full confrontation with Washington.
Thank you so much, Jonathan Tobin. I really appreciate your insights today.
Thank you.
At least 25 people arrested as large crowds of anti-Israel demonstrators try to disrupt the Met Gala in New York, clashing with police. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and other protests going on across the nation.
Police arrested multiple anti-Israel demonstrators in New York City as they tried to make their way to the Met Gala, a prestigious event supporting the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Commotion as police try to get protesters under control, wrestling them over a car. Here, officers have other protesters subdued as a surrounding crowd seems upset, yelling at police to remove their knees from the suspect's back. Here, young men with Jewish flags are led away by police. A Palestinian flag flies as a crowd, some wearing keffiyeh, stands on a corner. A man yells at a police officer using profane language. Police guard outside the Met Gala as a demonstrator shouts at them.
How many cases is it gonna take for you to wake up? Y'all do nothing but hide behind your back.
Here, protesters gather around a monument and then engage in prayer. The New York Post reported that over 1,000 marchers were stopped from reaching the Met Gala. Some reportedly later congregated in Central Park, where a World War I monument was vandalized with pro-Gaza messages and an American flag was set on fire. A large group of faculty members from the University of Chicago defended an anti-Israel student encampment Monday morning. Associate Professor Anton Ford says their most immediate concern is for the well-being of the students.
We don't want them getting beat up just because they're camping on the lawn.
The university must not employ police force to put an end to students' protests.
At MIT, hundreds of anti-Israel demonstrators returned to an encampment on Monday evening after being evicted last week. Demonstrators rushed through fencing and linked arms around the area where more than a dozen tents still stood. Columbia University canceled its large university-wide commencement ceremony Monday, following weeks of anti-Israel protests. The White House reacts to the cancellation.
And it is unfortunate that a small group of people went too far and cost their classmates this important event.
Commit to being louder.
Pro-Israel demonstrators gathered near Columbia on Monday. They had a rally in support of embattled Jewish, Israeli American, and Israeli students facing harassment, intimidation, or violence. Over to Europe, Dutch riot police ended an anti-Israel demonstration at an Amsterdam university early on Tuesday, arresting some 125 people in sometimes violent clashes. Local media reported demonstrators shooting fireworks at police officers, but there were no immediate reports of injuries on either side. Meanwhile, in Belgium, more than 100 students are occupying Ghent University in both a climate and a Gaza protest. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Free, free Palestine!
And on Capitol Hill, 2 House committees are asking top DC officials and education administrators to testify this week about the campus protests. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more.
On Tuesday, Secretary of Education will testify before the House Committee on Education, and lawmakers are expected to grill Secretary Cardona on his testimony before the Senate last week and also on his response to anti-Semitism on college campuses.
That's the most important thing to me, to make sure that our kids are safe on campus.
Do you have people at Columbia right now on the scene to see what's going on there? Do you have staff there to watch?
I do not have staff at.
Does the Civil Rights Office have somebody up there?
I do not have staff at the Columbia University.
On Wednesday, the House Oversight Committee will depose the mayor of D.C. and the chief of police of the District of Columbia regarding the encampment of pro-Palestinian protesters at the George Washington University and the alleged unwillingness of police to assist the university in removing unlawful protesters.
We want to follow the money trail to see if there are outside groups that are paying for these types of activity.
It is also expected that this week, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene will activate her motion to vacate the speakership, putting Speaker Johnson's leadership to a test. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
U.S. officials say an American soldier has been detained in Russia since last week. He was reportedly stationed in South Korea and traveled to Russia on his own. Moscow authorities accused him of stealing from a woman and arrested him on charges of, quote, criminal misconduct. The U.S. Army said his family has been told about the situation, and the State Department is working to provide consular support. The soldier is just one of several Americans who are detained in Russia.
Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping is touring Europe this week, his first visit in 5 years amid strained relations over trade issues and the Ukraine war.
NTD's France correspondent David Vivez talks with a French senator about the goal of the visit.
Since the first day of Xi Jinping's tours in Paris, the French president seemed to be distancing himself from his Chinese counterpart. Rather than greeting him at the airport as protocol would dictate, Emmanuel Macron opted to meet him alongside the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, a move that appeared to prioritize the EU stance. Xi's visit coincides with escalating trade tensions as the European Union investigates several Chinese industries for unfair competition.
Europe cannot accept market-distorting practices that could lead to deindustrialization here at home. But it is not good for Europe if it harms our security and makes us vulnerable. And this is why we act.
The EU Commission would also like China to step back from military support to Russia.
We've also discussed China's commitment not to provide any lethal equipment to Russia. More effort is needed to curtail delivery of dual-use goods to Russia that find their way to the battlefield.
The US ambassador to the NATO military alliance said recently that Beijing had been selling drone technology and gunpowder ingredients to Moscow. In the past 2 years, China-Russia trade has jumped 64%, equivalent to $240 billion. Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to visit China later this month. In brief comment, Xi said he viewed his relation with Europe as a priority. However, the main takeaway of Xi's visit might not just be about trade relations. In a press conference at the Senate today, French Senator Olivier Cadic says the CCP's first secretary has geopolitical objectives.
The Chinese first secretary needs to keep the European Union as far away from the United States as possible in order to isolate the United States. It's easy to understand their whole strategy, which is to try and divide us. So he will try to convince President Macron to separate from the United States, be autonomous, to take him down that road.
After France, Xi Jinping will head to Serbia and Hungary. These countries have close ties with Russia while talking with European neighbors.
His second strategy is to separate and divide us within the European Union. And it's no coincidence that I chose to go to Budapest. And of course, if he chooses to go to Serbia, it's only because it's one of the major candidates for membership of the European Union.
Xi will visit a South France city on the 7th and will then head to Budapest on the 8th. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Coming up, former President Trump's lawyers say they might request sanctions against special counsel Jack Smith.
Defense attorneys are now asking for discovery on prosecutors' evidence handling in the classified documents case. Stay with us for that.
More than just beautiful dance. It's a touch of the divine. More than just legends. It's the beautiful culture and wisdom of China before communism. More than just a performance. It's an experience that awakens the soul.
Lincoln Center, NJ Pack, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. Starting March 28th. Tickets at shenyun.com.
The tempting online world is encroaching on our campus. Is unplugging cables and confiscating phones the solution to protect our children? No, we just need a clean multimedia platform. Join Ganjing Campus to leverage premium channel features, professional development courses, and kindness event toolkits tailored for teachers. build a truly positive and interactive classroom community, foster a pure and delightful learning environment for children.
Hi, I'm Tim Che, the director and writer of The Firing Squad. You can participate in our Million Souls campaign, inviting everyone you know to Jesus. Listen, we all face some kind of firing squad in our lives, and yet faith in the Lord, that challenge can lead us to true peace in this insane world. We can't do it without you. We're competing with big Hollywood movies, so we're relying on your voice to spread the word. Thank you again for supporting this important movie.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The 2024 NTD 9th International Chinese Vocal Competition is scheduled to take place at Merkin Hall, Kaufman Music Center in New York from September 18th to 21st. The competition specially invites vocalists from the world-famous Shen Yun Performing Arts to serve as judges. The prestigious Gold Award is $10,000. Chinese vocal artists aged 18 to 50 are welcome to register.
Good to have you back. Former President Trump's lawyers say they might ask for sanctions against Special Counsel Jack Smith, depending on what a new bid for discovery turns up. This after Smith's team told the court the order of some files and evidence boxes was not the same as when collected in an FBI search. Prosecutors in a recent filing wrote it was inconsistent with what was previously understood and were presented to the court. Trump's lawyers yesterday argued prosecutors' handling of key evidence could be grounds for the case to be thrown out. Judge Eileen Cannon paused a Thursday deadline for the defense on certain pretrial disclosures. She said there would be a follow-up order to reset pretrial deadlines and hearings. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the latest in Trump's classified documents case.
Trump's defense team says they might file a motion to dismiss charges in his classified documents case if Smith's office can't reliably prove how it seized and handled key evidence. Smith's team says the order of some files and physical boxes of documents do not match digital scans. Now Trump's legal team says it will file more motions, including a possible request for sanctions against Smith. Lawyers for Trump co-defendant Walt Nauta first flagged the issues. Trump's lawyers followed up, saying they hadn't examined the boxes for themselves when they had the scans, writing it never occurred to them until last Friday that the prosecution could not be trusted to maintain the integrity of evidence, despite having expansive resources. Defense attorneys are asking for all communications and documents given to teams that handled evidence, including any memos, reports, letters, or notes. The defense wants chain of custody documents for boxes stored at the FBI office in Miami and for boxes flown to Washington, D.C. Trump's lawyers also asked for documents on the FBI process, used to replace handwritten sheets with classified cover sheets. Defense attorneys asked Smith's team for clarification on differences between physical boxes and scans, and prosecutors' reasons for allowing access. House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan launched a probe into Smith Monday. Jordan says Smith's acknowledgement raises grave concerns about impartial judgment and whether Smith's office misled a federal court. The Judiciary Committee is asking the Justice Department for all documents and communications related to the matter and gave a 2-week deadline. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Now to former President Trump's so-called hush money trial in New York. Trump once again was held in contempt yesterday for violating a gag order. Judge Juan Merchan said he'll consider jail time going forward.
This has never happened in this country before. It's a ridiculous thing, and I'm not supposed to be talking about it. But I am allowed to say that the judge has a conflict that like nobody's ever had before. You ought to take a look at it.
Merchan fined Trump another $1,000 for making remarks about the jury. That's in addition to the $9,000 he's already paid. The judge noted that the fine hasn't stopped Trump from violating the order. In a recent interview, the former president slammed the jury selection process, stating that most of the seated jurors were Democrats. The gag order bars Trump from speaking publicly about potential witnesses and many others who are associated with the court.
And after 2 weeks of testimony about the details of an alleged affair and a $130,000 payment, the focus in Trump's trial yesterday shifted to financial records.
The Trump Organization's former controller and accounts payable supervisor testify. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards has the details.
For the better part of the day on Monday, the Trump Organization's former controller and accounts payable supervisor testified about the records that are at the heart of the criminal case against the former president. The prosecution has accused Trump of falsifying business records to cover up the fact that he was reimbursing Michael Cohen for the $130,000 payment he made to Stormy Daniels. The prosecution laying the groundwork for the 34 charges in the indictment that say Trump mislabeled monthly payments made to Cohen as legal expenses. First up, Controller Jeff McConney. He testified that he learned about the so-called hush money payment when the former chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, told him they had to reimburse Cohen. Then McConney saw Cohen's bank statement showing the bank transfer to Daniels' attorney in the amount of $130,000. McConney said the payment included a $60,000 bonus that Cohen had been complaining about, and a different $240,000 reimbursement. The payments were made in $35,000 installments over the course of 12 months. On cross-examination, McConney said there was a period of chaos after Trump became president, and the way they did business changed. He said he worked closely with Weisselberg and never spoke to Trump about the payments. But he confirmed to the prosecution that he was not privy to conversations Trump had with Weisselberg. He just did what he was supposed to do. Witness Deborah Tarasoff took the stand next. She is Trump's accounts payable supervisor. Tarasoff similarly reviewed invoices confirming that she made payments to Cohen at the direction of McConney, who she reported to. On cross-examination, she testified that she did not get permission from Trump to generate the checks. She relied on approvals from McConney and the CFO, Alan Weisselberg. Trump was the sitting president during the time that the payments were made to Cohen. Tarasoff testified that when the checks went out, she didn't know where they went, but when they returned, they were signed by Trump. Arlene Richards reporting from the criminal courthouse in Manhattan.
And Indiana is holding primaries today.
Several congressional district contests and the race for governor are garnering the most attention.
The leading candidate to replace term-limited Governor Eric Holcomb is Trump-backed Senator Mike Braun. An April poll showed Braun with a large lead over multiple challengers. Braun faced criticism in the past for supporting the Black Lives Matter movement and saying he would join their march.
With Braun running for governor, Republicans have united behind Congressman Jim Banks to replace him in the U.S. Senate. The most notable House races on the ballot are Republican primaries in the 3rd Congressional District, which Banks is giving up to run for Senate, as well as the 5th, 6th, and 8th districts. And for some insight into the GOP primaries in Indiana, where there are 3 open seats, we bring in John Schweppe, the Director of Policy at the American Principles Project. Good morning to you, John. Thanks for being here. In the 3rd District, Marlon Stutzman, who's held the seat before, he's trying to make a comeback there. Does he have a chance?
Well, certainly, I think so. Ultimately, this is really interesting to see what's happening in Indiana, where you actually have a total refresh on the delegation. And, I think a lot of people are excited to see Jim Banks going to go over to the other chamber. I mean, he's been a really great conservative member. But now you have the opportunity to have some fresh blood and hopefully some folks who understand what time it is for conservatives. And also, that they need to support President Trump as we fight to win this election in November.
And John, we'll keep in mind here, Stutzman, he held the 3rd District for 3 terms, and then he ran for Senate, lost. Now he's running again here. 7 Republicans are vying for the nomination in Indiana's 6th District. That's after Representative Greg Pence announced his retirement. Who is Jefferson Shreve, and can his over $5 million that he put into his campaign push him out front?
Well, certainly $5 million in a congressional campaign is quite a bit. We'll kind of see what happens tonight with the voting totals and who actually wins. I don't want to be prognosticating here, but I will tell you, we're going to have some really strong Republicans who really, this is what primaries are for, right? We give voters the opportunity to decide who is the strongest candidate for November, and we'll see in that race as well.
Excellent, John. So, okay, let's look at the 8th District here. There are 8 Republicans trying to win the seat that's now open that a congressman has left after retiring. A super PAC spent almost $3 million against Hostetler, saying that he's an anti-Israel politician. Is that outside money going to make the difference?
Well, just like I just said, I mean, when you're talking about $3 million in a primary, of course that's going to be a big difference. And Republican voters, I know there's been some discussion about this in D.C. and maybe a little bit of a difference of opinion, but by and large, Republican voters support Israel. And so I think you see that money coming in. It's obviously going to have an impact, and obviously we'll see tonight with the results what money can buy.
And in the 1st District, some are saying that this is likely going to end up Democratic here. What's your stance on that?
Well, it really depends on how the presidential race goes, right? I mean, some of these polls you're seeing right now with Trump, where he's well ahead in the popular vote. I mean, I live in the state of Virginia, and some folks really think even that state could be in play. So don't want to cross any of these off. Obviously, the 1st District is going to probably be competitive, and we'll let the voters decide on that one to see who they send to Washington in November.
And are any of these districts critical in shaping the balance of power in the House?
Oh, absolutely. I think we need to make sure, look, it's a 1-seat majority out here in Washington, right? You're seeing all this speaker drama is mostly because of that situation. And so you look at some of these races, especially the ones that are closer, only swing districts. That's going to make the difference. And so Indiana has the opportunity to be a state that really helps drive who controls the House at the end of this.
Well, thank you for sharing your insight with us. John Schweppe, the Director of Policy at the American Principles Project.
Thanks for having me.
We're heading to break here. A deadly tornado, apple-sized hail, nearly 100 million people under a severe storm threat. The latest on some fierce weather hitting the U.S.
Boeing's first manned Starliner test flight to the International Space Station was scrubbed last night, 2 hours before liftoff. Hear why and find out what comes next.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I'm living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're going to benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
Welcome back. At least one person is dead and several others injured after a tornado struck a small town near Tulsa, Oklahoma.
The twister destroyed homes and toppled trees and power lines last night.
The storms started earlier Monday with gusty winds and rain. Tornadoes were then spotted after dark in northern Oklahoma. A storm in the small town of Covington produced multiple tornadoes over a period of an hour.
In Kansas, some areas were pelted by apple-sized hail 3 inches in diameter. Nearly 100 million people from Texas to Pennsylvania are under a severe storm threat today.
The Ohio Valley is likely to see the worst of the storms, according to the Storm Prediction Center.
Most of Indiana, northern Kentucky, and western Ohio are under a level 3 out of 5 threat.
And NASA postponed yesterday's launch of the first manned test flight of the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. NASA said the launch was stopped over a problem with the Atlas V rocket that carried the Starliner. The mission was scrubbed just 2 hours before liftoff, with 2 crew members strapped in and waiting for the countdown. The Starliner capsule was going to take the 2 astronauts to the International Space Station. A spokesman said a pressure relief valve on the Atlas rocket started fluttering open and closed, making a loud noise. The valve might need to be replaced, delaying the launch until next week. Engineers will determine if the valve is still usable. The launch team could try again as soon as Friday. And do federal agencies have too much power?
Well, there's a group challenging this in the Supreme Court, and they are winning. For example, the Supreme Court took up the case of an auditor in a small Texas accounting firm who was fined $22,000 after the SEC said she broke the rules. But the judge in the case was picked by the federal agency itself.
Sound fair? In 2023, the High Court ruled unanimously that people like that auditor can challenge the protections surrounding that judge before they determine rules were broken.
For more on further efforts to reduce government agencies' power, we hear from Peggy Little, a senior litigation counsel at the New Civil Liberties Alliance.
These agencies, they pass the rules, they charge people with violations of the rules, they adjudicate the rules, they issue the penalties for the rules, and they are the first court of appeals for that prosecution. Any time you have that concentration of power in one branch of government, the founders described that as the very definition of tyranny. So we were delighted to receive a unanimous ruling overturning 6 circuit courts of appeals that said, no, you may go to a real U.S. district court and challenge whether those proceedings are constitutional.
Right, Peggy, and your founder of your organization calls this administrative absolutism, and he says it's not new. It goes back to that power that the medieval kings wielded, and he's saying that the federal government agencies are now taking up this power when we know it's in fact Congress that enacts the laws of this land. So what about these pending litigations?
Yes, then we have 3 other cases that have been argued but not decided this term. One is the Cargill case. That was Richard Samp was our lead counsel on that matter, and Cargill is a deference case, and it is an important case because what happened is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, this again is an agency, decided after the Las Vegas shooting that bump stocks were now illegal. But Congress never made that decision. And in fact, for decades, bump stocks had been legal. So the question in that case is, does Congress make the law, or does an agency's flip-flop become the law? So it's a very important case on the source of lawmaking power, and we were thrilled to see the U.S. Supreme Court take the case and look forward to its ruling.
Well, of course, and you had mentioned surrounding some of these victories here that there is a tide turning now in favor of those who want to pull back that power from the federal agencies here. So what is it looking like in the Supreme Court? How are they leaning?
Well, I think that the Supreme Court is concerned. Justice Gorsuch and Justice Thomas have long been concerned with this transfer of lawmaking power to administrative agencies. Deference, which is the issue in the cases Cargill and also in Relentless, is Chevron deference. In those cases, what you have is a court saying, well, the agency's view of the law prevails in an actual proceeding, and that can't be right. It has to be, when you go into court against an agency, it is the judge who needs to decide what is right. And when you have a rule like deference that says essentially the agency always wins, that transfers. It's an abdication of judicial power, and the judicial power is vested in a separate branch of government and should not ever be the case where the executive gets to be the winner in such proceedings. And then we also have a case of Murphy versus Missouri at the court.
Peggy Little, Senior Litigation Counsel at the New Civil Liberties Alliance, thank you for weighing in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next, Medicare Trust Fund reserves are expected to be depleted 5 years later than forecasted. What this means for your scheduled benefits.
And the FAA opens a new probe into Boeing, adding to a growing list of investigations faced by the airline manufacturer. That story and more with the host of NTD's Business Matters.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth.
without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
If you're buzzed and doing this, to make yourself feel okay to drive,
ZWX.
you're not okay to drive.
YGKLVW. Regular you.
Good to have you back. Joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the business world.
Don, we want to know about gas prices. What do you have for us?
Well, here's the thing. So what happened was breaking overnight, oil prices went up today slightly. So this is after Israel struck the city of Rafah, and this maintains support that the market has gained from increased tensions in the Middle East. So Brent crude futures rose 21 cents to $83.54 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures went up 1 cent at $78.49. So this rise in price partly reversed the drop in price we saw last week, which were some of the steepest weekly losses in the last 3 months.
Yeah, well, now there are concerns that gas prices might hit $5 a gallon here, and that was something that we saw in June 2022, the record high after Russia invaded Ukraine. So if this Israel-Hamas war spills over, it could affect that. Now, what about the Social Security Trust Fund? What can you tell us there?
Yeah, so also not too much good news here on that front as well, because the Medicare Trust Fund will be exhausted. It's going to be depleted in 2036, and the combined Social Security Trust Fund will be exhausted in 2035. So this is according to the program's trustees' projections yesterday. Now, what happens after that date, right? Well, the program that provides healthcare to seniors and some people who are disabled would only be able to get 89% of the pay of the original. So this shows the long-term insolvency problems of the program, of course, and together the programs make up the largest share of federal government outlays, costing $2.2 trillion in fiscal year 2023, or about 36% of the year's total. So the reason here is very simple, actually. There's too many people taking out of it and not too many people paying into it. So with the baby boom generation retiring, Congress ultimately is going to need to strengthen the program here. So that's either by raising revenues, reducing costs, or even cutting benefits. So the Biden administration has rejected benefit cuts and has proposed raising payroll taxes on Americans earning over $400,000 a year.
Right, like you said, long-term problem, but since those numbers were looked at last year, this timeline itself actually is an extended timeline of 5 years already. Maybe that's a little bit of a spark of hope. Let's turn to Boeing once again. So there's a new probe. What is the situation there?
Yeah, it seems like one probe after another here for Boeing. So investigators are probing whether Boeing employees, whether they have failed to perform some quality inspections on its 787 jets. So the Federal Aviation Administration said yesterday that the FAA that it's going to investigate whether to determine the inspections were conducted and whether company employees may have falsified aircraft records. So while the investigation takes place, Boeing employees will inspect the Dreamliners it has not yet delivered to airline customers and is going to develop a plan for the planes that are currently flying. So the FAA said that Boeing voluntarily informed the agency in April, saying that it may not have completed required inspections to confirm adequate bonding and grounding where the wings join the fuselage on certain 787 Dreamliners.
Well, yeah, and just last month there was that Boeing engineer who came out saying that there could be gaps in the 787 fuselage that aren't being filled correctly because of their inappropriate process that they have there. Tyson Foods, though, they had a big drop off in their shares, worst one-day decline in a year. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it seems like not too many good news this morning. So when it comes to that, it came after the U.S. meat packer warned that persistent inflation and high commodity prices could weigh on upcoming results from the company. So the CEO said that third quarter results could be weaker than the fourth quarter due to performance in Tyson's pork and prepared foods divisions. Now, investors, they viewed their outlook as a disappointment here, saying the third quarter is typically the strongest, actually, from a seasonal perspective. Tyson has shuttered 6 U.S. chicken plants since the start of 2023. On top of that, it's eliminated corporate employees and announced plans to close a pork plant. All this in an attempt to boost results and to rein in costs here for the company.
Right. Seems like people are more opting out of meat now, perhaps a sign of consumers becoming more and more price sensitive. Thank you so much, Don Ma, host of Business Matters.
Thank you.
Coming up, President Biden is set to condemn anti-Semitism in remembrance of the Holocaust today. And we hear accounts of Holocaust survivors who recall the October 7th attack in Israel.
We are only 80 years removed from countries that killed 60 to 70 million people intentionally. And we have people being like, oh, it can't happen here. Yeah, it can, and it might.
These people, they're not interested in the facts. They're not interested in anything except crushing people that are in their way.
There needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members.
A strong church can stop this.
Do you ever wake up and realize your life has no purpose?
Do I have a death wish? Morgan asked. Maybe I did. I thought this would be our final run ever. We had made millions and millions of dollars, but God had other plans.
Peter Lowe, the one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
The next day, something strange happened. Someone came up to me and gave me this flyer about Jesus.
You can be in heaven or you can be in hell. The choice is yours.
We'll walk straight out of here. Pretend to be the media.
This pathetic maggot got caught trying to escape my prison. Nobody escapes my prison.
He's a changed person. He's a new man.
I found Christ in here, and he forgave me.
I found Christ too.
My name is Peter Lowe, and I will be executed in 2 hours. Why am I being executed, you ask?
Jesus is for free, and salvation is a gift. Do you believe in Jesus?
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping. Maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Thanks for staying with us. President Biden is planning to condemn anti-Semitism during a Holocaust remembrance ceremony today.
This comes during a time of increased violence and hateful language towards Jews after the Hamas attack on Israel and the conflict in Gaza.
Biden will make his remarks at the Capitol amid ongoing protests on college campuses across the country.
Some of these protests have included anti-Semitic chants and threats towards Jewish students and supporters of Israel.
And Israel's Holocaust commemorations this year have a powerful significance for 6 elderly survivors.
They have been deeply affected by the Hamas terror attacks that sparked the ongoing Gaza war. Here's the story.
86-year-old Bella Haim fled with her family as a child from Poland during World War II. On October 7th last year, her grandson Yotam, like her a resident of a village near the Gaza border, was taken hostage by Hamas. He managed to escape, only to be accidentally shot dead by Israeli soldiers. The trauma drove Haim to return to Poland, where she will on Monday take part in the March of the Living at the site of the Auschwitz death camp. The annual ceremony is timed to coincide with Israel's Holocaust Memorial Day. Holocaust commemorations this year have a searing significance for her and 6 other elderly survivors now deeply scarred by the Hamas attack that sparked the ongoing Gaza war.
What happened here on October 7th, it's impossible to believe. I see the huge picture mounted in the new library in Jerusalem with all those who were killed and murdered. It's impossible. To this day, I cannot fathom. I'm running away from it.
A veteran campaigner for peace with the Palestinians, Haim said she would no longer pursue that activism. Now what interests me is only my people, she added. Among those joining her will be 90-year-old Daniel Luz. His hometown kibbutz Be'eri lost 1/10 of its residents to the Palestinian attackers. In some ways, he said, that ordeal was worse for him than the European war, when he escaped Nazi roundups in his native France, although half of his family perished in Poland.
In France as a child, I suffered all kinds of traumas that I've learned to cope with. But in Be'eri, it was the first time that I felt the fear of death.
On October 7th last year, he woke up to the sound of Arabic yelling and gunfire. A neighboring house was riddled with bullets. Lutz was untouched. He says he imagined the souls of the 6 million Holocaust victims steering Hamas away from him.
And Prime Minister Netanyahu, he used Israel's Holocaust Remembrance ceremony to kind of push back on that international criticism of the war, saying that if Israel has to stand alone, it will in its goal.
Right. And just, to follow up on that topic, it's too early to be forgotten. And also we should remember how Hitler actually came to power, because he used democratic structures. He had used discontent and outrage among people. He sowed lies and created that hatred. And he used all of that to come to power. And I can only imagine how living and seeing all of this now, how it's playing out now with that kind of trauma in the background, how terrifying that must be.
Yeah, and like Bibi says, never again is now.
Yeah, right. All right, we're heading to a quick break at this point, but we'll be right back, so stay with us.
There are real consequences to controlled media. and NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Israeli tanks capture the Gazan side of the Rafah border crossing overnight. The Hamas terrorist group demands a ceasefire with terms Israel says are far from what's necessary for a deal. Hostage talks are set in Cairo today.
Clashes with police as protesters try to disrupt the Met Gala. MIT students retake an encampment they were evicted from, knocking down police barriers. The latest from anti-Israel protests.
A judge threatens to throw former President Trump in jail over gag order violations in his New York trial, and defense lawyers in the classified documents case consider asking for sanctions against prosecutors and for the case to be dismissed.
Boeing's first manned Starliner test flight was scrubbed last night, just hours before liftoff. Hear why and find out what happens next.
Reviving traditional values through Chinese classical music and dance. New York-based Shen Yun Performing Arts is wrapping up its 2024 global season, while one audience member called the show nourishment for the spirit.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Today's Tuesday, May 7th, and today's top news. Israel's military seized control of the Gazan side of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt early this morning.
The IDF says it started a precise counterterrorism operation in the area after intelligence indicated the Rafah crossing was being used by terrorists.
The IDF released footage of tanks driving up to the crossing today. It says terrorists fired mortars from the area toward a key aid crossing. This comes after a Hamas rocket attack killed 4 soldiers there on Sunday. Israel's military says special forces are handling the crossing, but did not say how long troops would control it.
The Hamas terror group says it wants a proposed ceasefire deal by Egypt and Qatar. The framework is for 33 hostages in the first of 3 phases. Israel said those terms are far from meeting necessary requirements and is sending a delegation to Cairo for talks. Mediators said negotiations will resume today.
This comes after Israel ordered evacuations in eastern Rafah and began striking terrorist targets yesterday. Israel's war cabinet says it will continue to exert military pressure on Hamas.
Israel's army asked around 100,000 civilians to move to a humanitarian zone with water, food, and medical supplies. The White House says the U.S. remains opposed to a Rafah invasion and that President Biden has been briefed on negotiations.
Earlier, I spoke to Jonathan Tobin, the editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. I asked him about Israel's latest operations in Rafah and Hamas's decision to accept a ceasefire deal now.
Well, Hamas didn't accept a deal. Hamas made a counterproposal, which was just one more of a series of extortionate attempts to try to give away a few hostages, not giving up all of the hostages, but only just, 33. Some of those may be just merely corpses. There are over 100 people still being held by Hamas. There's been no proof of life. Some of them are American citizens.
So Israeli officials have been saying that this is a limited operation now. So what do you think is the objective with this?
the objective is to prepare the way. I mean, Netanyahu has been edging towards the inevitable, which is to clear out Rafah. He's been trying to do it in stages so as to not give the United States any pretext for declaring that it's creating a humanitarian catastrophe. They've set up an area where people can go, people who are in Rafah can go and still have care. But remember, every Palestinian in Rafah is basically a human shield for Hamas and for its remaining military formations.
So is there any sense of what could happen after a full Rafah invasion? Like, would Israel keep, because Israel keeps saying that it's the last stronghold, could that mean that after a full invasion or operation, that would be the end of the war?
Well, once Hamas is cleared out of its last strongholds, hopefully that will mean the end of the war, and that there won't be an effort to revive it from within any civilian areas. Yes, that would mean the end of the war. It would also mean the end of Hamas governing any part of Gaza.
Thank you so much, Jonathan Tobin. I really appreciate your insights today.
Thank you.
At least 25 people arrested as large crowds of anti-Israel demonstrators try to disrupt the Met Gala in New York, clashing with police. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and other protests going on across the nation.
Police arrested multiple anti-Israel demonstrators in New York City as they tried to make their way to the Met Gala, a prestigious event supporting the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Commotion as police try to get protesters under control, wrestling them over a car. Here, officers have other protesters subdued as a surrounding crowd seems upset, yelling at police to remove their knees from the suspect's back. Here, young men with Jewish flags are led away by police. A Palestinian flag flies as a crowd somewhere in Kafia stands on a corner. A man yells at a police officer using profane language. Police guard outside the Met Gala as a demonstrator shouts at them.
How many cases is it gonna take for you to wake up? Y'all do nothing but hide behind your back.
Here, protesters gather around a monument and then engage in prayer. The New York Post reported that over 1,000 marchers were stopped from reaching the Met Gala. Some reportedly later congregated in Central Park, where a World War I monument was vandalized with pro-Gaza messages and an American flag was set on fire. A large group of faculty members from the University of Chicago defended an anti-Israel student encampment Monday morning. Associate Professor Anton Ford says their most immediate concern is for the well-being of the students.
We don't want them getting beat up just because they're camping on the lawn.
The university must not employ police force to put an end to students' protests.
At MIT, hundreds of anti-Israel demonstrators returned to an encampment on Monday evening after being evicted last week. Demonstrators rushed through fencing and linked arms around the area where more than a dozen tents still stood. Columbia University canceled its large university-wide commencement ceremony Monday, following weeks of anti-Israel protests. The White House reacts to the cancellation.
And it is unfortunate that a small group of people went too far and cost their classmates this important event.
Commit to being louder.
Pro-Israel demonstrators gathered near Columbia on Monday. They had a rally in support of embattled Jewish, Israeli American, and Israeli students facing harassment, intimidation, or violence. Over to Europe, Dutch riot police ended an anti-Israel demonstration at an Amsterdam university early on Tuesday, arresting some 125 people in sometimes violent clashes. Local media reported demonstrators shooting fireworks at police officers, but there were no immediate reports of injuries on either side. Meanwhile, in Belgium, more than 100 students are occupying Ghent University in both a climate and a Gaza protest. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Free, free Palestine! Former President Trump's lawyers say they might ask for sanctions against special counsel Jack Smith, depending on what a new bid for discovery turns up.
This after Smith's team said the order of some files and evidence boxes was not the same as when collected in an FBI search.
Trump's lawyers yesterday argued prosecutors' handling of key evidence could be grounds for the case to be thrown out.
Judge Eileen Cannon paused a Thursday deadline for the defense on certain pretrial disclosures. She said there would be a follow-up order to reset pretrial deadlines and hearings.
Trump's defense team says they might file a motion to dismiss charges in the classified documents case if Smith's office can't reliably prove how it seized and handled key evidence.
Defense attorneys are asking for all communications and documents given to teams that handled evidence. That includes any memos, reports, letters, or notes. They also asked Smith's team for clarification on differences between physical boxes and scans and reasons for allowing access.
House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan is launching a probe into Smith, raising concerns about impartial judgment.
The Judiciary Committee is asking the Justice Department for all documents and communications related to the matter and gave a 2-week deadline.
And former President Trump is facing possible jail time over his gag order in the New York trial.
Judge Juan Merchan found Trump in contempt of court for the 10th time yesterday.
The judge warned Trump the court will consider a jail sanction if he keeps violating his gag order.
The order bars Trump from talking publicly about witnesses and jurors, as well as the judge and district attorney's family members.
Judge Merchan has now fined Trump a total of $10,000 for gag order violations. Merchan ruled further violations will be punishable by incarceration if appropriated and warranted.
Prosecutors said yesterday it will take roughly 2 more weeks to make their case. And here for a recap of day 12 of former President Trump's business records trial in New York is Zach Smith, a former federal prosecutor and senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Thanks for helping us make sense of this here, Zach. What was revealed in former Trump Organization controller Jeff McConney's testimony, which contained information about evidence pertaining to the documents?
Well, look, this entire trial is unprecedented, and we're getting a deep dive into the Trump Organization and how it ran its business, and a lot of the issues that were swirling around the Trump Organization at the time these alleged hush money payments were made. But I think it's important to emphasize, you mentioned the gag order just a moment ago, the threat of jailing a former president of the United States and a leading contender to once again be the president of the United States really is an incredibly unprecedented situation. And I feel like every time we talk about the Trump trial, I say it's an unprecedented situation. But this is certainly an unprecedented situation that we would have if to jail Donald Trump. And many individuals, including Donald Trump and his legal team, have raised First Amendment concerns about this gag order. And I think many of those concerns remain. And so it'll be very interesting to see what the judge does in this case if he's confronted with another request by the prosecutors to fine or punish Donald Trump in some way for violating this gag order.
Yeah, First Amendment concerns surrounding that gag order are important here. We get to talk about that later. When we talk about Trump's involvement in the business records and whether or not he falsified them, that's at the heart of this case. Let's just set that aside for a second. Does any of this testimony show that the Trump Organization itself falsified business records aside from Trump?
Well, look, these are business record-keeping charges. They're ordinarily misdemeanor charges. But what's important to keep in mind, the only reason Alvin Bragg is trying to use these charges and bootstrap them into felonies is on a very novel theory that somehow these documents were falsified in the furtherance of covering up another crime. In this case, apparently that's a federal campaign finance violation. And so we've heard some testimony that Donald Trump may have had other motives in making these payments aside from simply wanting to pursue the presidency or benefiting in a political nature from the making of these payments. Maybe there were personal reasons. He didn't want this story to come out. Maybe there were other business reasons. He didn't want these stories to come out. And so a lot of the testimony has kind of gotten to that motive. What was the purpose of these payments? Were they primarily designed to further Donald Trump's presidential aspirations? or were there other potential motives as well? And a lot of that was explored when Hope Hicks and others were on the stand, but it'll certainly be very interesting to watch what further information and evidence the prosecutors put on in the remaining time at this trial.
In his background here, a key part of this is that prosecutors allege that the money sent to Cohen was not processed as expenses. They said that the reimbursement plan was made to look like they were for real legal expenses when in fact this was repayment for hush money. Deborah Tarasoff, she worked in the accounting department for the Trump organization. She said that Trump used his personal bank account to reimburse Cohen for the hush money payment. What does that mean for the prosecution?
Well, look, again, the key fact that has to be honed in here is essentially the prosecution has to prove that these payments were made in furtherance or an effort to cover up another crime. And so, look, if there were mistakes made in the business record of the Trump organizations, those are very minor charges, misdemeanors that are rarely, if ever, prosecuted. And so again, a lot of what the prosecutors will have to show is this motive, this idea that there was another crime that Donald Trump and his associates were trying to cover up. And frankly, based on what we've heard so far, that seems like a very tough slope for the prosecutors to summit.
Well, thank you for your analysis. Zach Smith, former federal prosecutor and senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation.
Thank you.
On to weather. At least one person is dead and several others injured after a tornado struck a small town near Tulsa, Oklahoma.
The twister destroyed homes and toppled trees and power lines last night.
The storm started earlier Monday with gusty winds and rain. Tornadoes were then spotted after dark in northern Oklahoma. A storm in the small town of Covington produced multiple tornadoes over a period of an hour.
In Kansas, some areas were pelted by apple-sized hail, 3 inches in diameter. Nearly 100 million people from Texas to Pennsylvania are under a severe storm threat today.
The Ohio Valley is likely to see the worst of the storms, according to the Storm Prediction Center.
Most of Indiana, northern Kentucky, and western Ohio are under a level 3 out of 5 threat.
NASA postponed yesterday's launch of the first unmanned test flight of the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. NASA said the launch was stopped over a problem with the Atlas V rocket that carries the Starliner. The mission was scrubbed just 2 hours before liftoff, with 2 crew members strapped in and waiting for the countdown. The Starliner capsule was going to take the 2 astronauts to the International Space Station. A spokesman said a pressure relief valve on the Atlas rocket started fluttering open and closed, making a loud noise. The valve might need to be replaced, delaying the launch until next week. Engineers will determine if the valve is still usable, and the launch team could try again as soon as Friday. Coming up.
That's a manned Starliner.
Yeah.
Yeah, putting those astronauts, trying to put them up there.
That's true. That is true. And coming up, reviving traditional values through Chinese classical music and dance. New York-based Shen Yun Performing Arts is wrapping up its 2024 global season. Why one audience member called the show a nourishment for the spirit.
Funny expression. There's a little scar right below his neck. The artist, on a trip to somewhere in South America, he met this kid who told him a story about himself. The technique is really good. You'll see, like in the foreground, there's water on his face. The texture is so realistic, but then sort of in the back, you have these washed out colors, almost a sort of fantasy feel. The whole of the picture is very balanced, and you still get that sense of harmony and warm light from it. The artist, he was really moved by the child's spirit. The child's from the slums, and so he looks around and he sees people who either get into drugs or they get into gangs, And he doesn't want that for himself. So he was telling this artist about how he's going to make a better life for himself. The immense spirit and determination that the kid had really stuck with the guy. So that's why he painted such a large portrait of the child.
Many of us have been child fighters. But this little kid learned to defend himself in his own way. It's a great sacrifice that way. And so this is another form of strength, another form of endurance. We are capable of much more than we think. These children amaze us.
The 2024 NTD 9th International Chinese Vocal Competition is scheduled to take place at Merkin Hall, Kaufman Music Center in New York from September 18th to 21st. The competition specially invites vocalists from the world-famous Shen Yun Performing Arts to serve as judges. The prestigious Gold Award is $10,000. Chinese vocal artists aged 18 to 50 are welcome to register.
Welcome back. As Shen Yun Performing Arts wraps up its 2024 season, this month it's still moving audiences around the world.
Over the weekend, the New York-based dance group gave 18 performances in 6 cities around the world, taking audiences on a journey through ancient China.
A Mexican writer called Shen Yun a nourishment for our spirit and added that the world needs more of a performance like this to save human values. Take a look.
Magical. The colors gold, blue, red, silver are extraordinary. It bursts out like flowers, like a bouquet of flowers, or like fairies, a painting of fairies. It's all beautiful. It's bursting with color. It's really good, and the music is exceptional.
The live musicians along with the live dancers, and then also the film on the back of the stage is just amazing. It's all coordinated just beautifully. Traditional music and the instruments brings it all together. It sounds very, very authentic.
The costumes, the dances, it's beautiful, but it also has a very profound message about communism and what we need to start looking out for here, because it can very easily happen to not be able to practice your religion or think freely because you're afraid. It's very sad. But they find a beautiful way to present it.
Shen Yun's mission is to revive 5,000 years of divinely inspired culture and values from before communism. Theatergoers have been deeply touched by the effort and also took note of a deeper message.
I'd really like to see us adopt the philosophy you presented to us for a better, more peaceful world. And today I'm calm because I've seen a lot of goodness this afternoon, a lot of Zen. All the dancers and musicians in this symphony orchestra are people of high moral character. The artists have worked hard for many years. They are perfectly trained. The performance gives nourishment for our spirit, but also has a very important goal: to rescue the human spirit from the claws of the red dragon.
Bring the culture back to what it was. I think it's fantastic. Because everybody, history is very important to every culture. Not just the Chinese culture, but our culture as well. And making people aware of what has happened also prevents, hopefully in the future, mishaps happening again.
Audience members value the opportunity to learn about true traditional Chinese culture, and many said Shen Yun is more than just a performance.
And the great thing is that this Shen Yun performance is not just a cultural performance. It transcends the cultural into the spiritual. I sincerely hope that there will be more and more performances like this. In fact, there should be more performances like this that save traditional human values in the face of the destruction of our values, customs, and religions.
Honestly, all humans on Earth should have the chance to see this perfect, beautiful, and magnificent performance. It brings emotions together with art. I thought it was divine.
Shen Yun's 2024 World Tour will continue until May 11th. NTD News, New York.
Wow, well, on that note then, if you haven't seen it yet, you can still have an opportunity until this weekend. You can actually find their schedule on shenyun.org.
Yeah, they're just so busy. I mean, 150 cities every year they cover.
Yeah. But apparently they grew to 8 troops, and yeah, so many places, so it shouldn't be hard to catch one. But it shows a more peaceful world. Isn't that necessary right now as an escape?
I know what you mean. And then all the while showcasing that beauty and all that color. And I mean, that's 1 million people every year that go see it. It's got to be something to it. I mean, they all are going, and a lot of people go back.
Really? Yeah, probably. I can see why. All right, we want to end the show with some good news. A zebra's nearly week-long time on the run in Washington state has come to an end.
The mare was one of 4 zebras that escaped from a trailer off Interstate 90 last Sunday.
The other 3 were captured within a few hours, but the 4th zebra, named Shug, remained on the loose.
Officials say Shug was finally found Friday evening in Riverbend. That's about 30 miles from Seattle.
The zebra appeared to be in good condition and will be transported to Montana, which is where the zebras were headed before they made their great escape.
Oh yeah, they got a nice little gait to them. They're pretty fast, those guys.
Yeah, how did they even? Good job to whoever captured them. I wouldn't even know how to start.
Yeah.
All right, we have to wrap up our show now, but be sure to stay tuned for NTD's News Today broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Time coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
That's right. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore ShenYunCreations.com.